Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, I want to speak a word into your life today, and that word is grace. Not just the grace you give others, not just the grace you preach, but the grace you give to yourself. Because, hear me on this, you cannot give to the world what you refuse to give to yourself. You can't pour from an empty cup, and you can't heal the world while you're bleeding inside. So today, I came to give you 23 lessons, not rules, not judgments, but lessons in being kinder to the one person you spend your entire life with. You are not your past. That truth alone has the power to break chains that have kept people bound for years. See, the problem is not always what happened to us. It's what we've agreed with since it happened. Somewhere along the way, we allowed a failure, a betrayal, a wrong turn, or a painful memory to become part of our identity. We stopped seeing it as something we experienced and started seeing it as something we are. But listen closely, just because it was a chapter in your story doesn't mean it gets to become your title. You are not what you did, and you are not what was done to you. You are not your lowest moment, your biggest regret, or the version of you that didn't know better back then. You are becoming, evolving, and being refined, not defined by your past. The enemy of your soul will try to whisper lies that sound like facts. He'll remind you of your mistakes and tell you that your future is canceled because of your past. But let me tell you something. Your past is not a prophecy, it's a page. It's ink that has already dried. You can't go back and edit it, but you can choose how you respond to it now. And when you take your eyes off the rearview mirror and start looking ahead through the windshield of faith, you begin to realize that your past didn't disqualify you. It prepared you. It gave you wisdom. It gave you strength. It gave you a testimony, but it is not your identity. Too many people are living life with labels that came from the worst day of their lives. They walk around with invisible tags: failure, addict, dropout, unworthy, damaged, rejected, forgetting that labels can be removed. You weren't created with those names. You were created with purpose, dignity, and greatness inside you. Just because you've been through the fire doesn't mean you came out burned. You came out refined. You came out stronger. The fire was never meant to destroy you. It was meant to reveal what couldn't be burned away: your core, your calling, your character. Think about how many times we rehearse our pain like it's a script. We talk ourselves out of opportunities because we still see ourselves as the person who messed up. We stay silent when we should speak up. We shrink when we should expand, all because we're carrying around a self-hatred that's outdated. The past may have visited you, but it doesn't get to live rent-free in your mind anymore. You don't owe it that space. You certainly don't owe it your future. Every single person who ever became something powerful had a past they had to overcome. There are no exceptions. The difference is they made a decision to stop being haunted by what was and start being driven by what could be. They understood that mistakes are part of the process, but they are not the whole story. And let's be honest, some of the greatest lessons you've learned didn't come from success. They came from moments you thought would break you. But look at you now. You're still here. You're still breathing. You're still fighting for something greater. You are not your past. Say it out loud. Say it until it silences the shame. Because that version of you that made that mistake is no longer here. You've grown since then. You've learned. And you're still learning. So stop resurrecting the you that no longer fits where you're going. You were never meant to live in reverse. You were created to rise forward. Rest is holy, not just useful, not just healthy, holy. We live in a world that celebrates the hustle, that worships the grind, that preaches a gospel of burnout disguised as ambition. Somewhere along the way, we began to equate worth with work, thinking that if we aren't moving, producing, or achieving, we're somehow falling behind. But let me remind you, God himself, the creator of the universe, the one who spoke light into darkness, who formed mountains and flung stars into the sky, he rested not because he was tired, but to model something sacred, to teach us that rest isn't the reward after the work is done. Rest is part of the work. There is something deeply spiritual about stillness, about saying, I've done what I can do today, and that is enough. Rest is an act of faith. It's telling the world and your own mind that everything doesn't depend on your effort alone. It's releasing control long enough to remember that your value doesn't come from constant motion. Rest says, I trust that the same God who holds the universe together can hold my life together while I take a breath. The problem is, we've been trained to feel guilty when we stop. Like we're being lazy, like we're falling behind, like someone out there is getting ahead of us while we're taking a break. But let me ask you, what's the point of running full speed if you're headed straight toward a breakdown? What's the value of crossing the finish line if you lose your peace, your health, and your purpose along the way? Rest is not weakness, it's wisdom. When you rest, you reconnect. You hear what your spirit has been trying to tell you while you were too busy to listen. You give your soul space to breathe. You give your mind a chance to slow down, to detox from the noise and the notifications and the expectations. Rest allows you to come back to yourself. Because let's be honest, sometimes in the chase, we lose sight of who we are. We become machines instead of humans, projects instead of people. There's a rhythm to life that includes rest for a reason. Look at nature. Trees don't bear fruit year-round. The earth takes seasons of stillness. The tide goes out before it comes back in. Everything God made moves in a rhythm that includes pause. And yet we, the most intelligent of his creation, try to outwork that rhythm. We ignore the signals. We silence the whispers that say, slow down. And then we wonder why we feel empty even when we're accomplishing everything on the list. Rest is holy because it reminds us we're not slaves. We're not slaves to people's opinions, to timelines, to metrics, or to our own perfectionism. Rest is the reset button. It's the moment where healing can begin, where creativity is reborn, where strength is restored. It's not about doing nothing. It's about doing what matters most, reconnecting with yourself, with your creator, and with the purpose behind the. When you rest, you tell your body, your mind, and your spirit that you are safe, that the world will not fall apart because you took time to breathe, that your value does not increase based on how busy you are. Rest reminds you that you are not a machine, you are a miracle. And miracles don't need to hustle 24/7 to be powerful. They just need to be. Boundaries are a blessing, not a burden, not a blockade, not a sign that you're mean or selfish. They are a divine gift. Boundaries are how you protect what's sacred in your life. They are how you create space for peace, clarity, and purpose. Without them, everything gets access to you. Every voice, every demand, every expectation. And when everything has access, nothing has value. Your energy becomes scattered, your time becomes stolen, and your identity starts to dissolve in the noise of everyone else's desires. Boundaries are how you reclaim yourself. It's not your job to be accessible 24/7. It's not your assignment to be everything for everybody. You weren't created to be stretched so thin that you disappear in the process. You were created to walk in purpose, and purpose requires focus, and focus requires boundaries. The people who love you, truly love you, will respect your no as much as they respect your yes. Because love is not about constant availability. Love honors limits. Setting boundaries doesn't make you unkind, it makes you clear. It tells the world how to treat you. It tells your relationships what's healthy and what's not. It tells your own spirit, I am worth protecting. Every time you set a boundary, you choose long-term peace over short-term comfort. You choose to build a life where you can breathe, not just survive. People may not always like your boundaries, especially if they benefited from your lack of them, but their discomfort is not your responsibility. Their adjustment is not your burden to carry. Boundaries are not walls that keep people out. They are gates that let the right people in. They don't destroy connection, they preserve it. Because anything that is constantly overdrawn will eventually go bankrupt. That includes your emotional energy, that includes your time, your focus, your love. When you give everything away without pause, you end up bitter, exhausted, and empty. And from that place, you can't pour into anyone, not even yourself. Boundaries keep your well full so that when you give, it's from overflow, not depletion. You are allowed to outgrow environments where your boundaries are seen as a threat. You are allowed to say, I'm not available for that conversation right now. You are allowed to protect your mornings, your rests, your joy. You are allowed to have preferences, space, needs, and limits. You are allowed to evolve. The version of you that used to say yes to everything might have been operating from fear. Fear of rejection, fear of missing out, fear of disappointing others. But the healed version of you knows that peace is a priority, not a luxury. People might call you different when you start setting boundaries. Let them. That's because you are different now. You've tasted what it feels like to be drained, to be taken for granted, to be stretched beyond what's healthy, and now you've made a decision to do life differently. You've chosen alignment over approval. You've chosen honesty over pretending. You've chosen peace over people pleasing. Boundaries teach others how to show up for you, and they teach you how to show up for yourself. You no longer sacrifice your well-being at the altar of someone else's comfort. You no longer confuse overextending with being valuable. You are worthy of space. You are worthy of rest. You are worthy of relationships where your no doesn't cost you connection. Boundaries are not just a life skill, they are a life saver. Perfection is a myth. It's an illusion we chase, a moving target that keeps shifting the closer we think we're getting to it. It whispers lies like, just a little better, just a little more, just fix this one thing, and then everything will finally be enough. But no matter how far you go, how hard you push, or how much you achieve, perfection keeps raising the bar. It tells you that you can rest once you're flawless, once you've earned the right to stop, once there are no more cracks in your reflection. But the truth is that day never comes. Because perfection isn't real. It's a trap. We were not created to be perfect. We were created to be authentic. We were designed to be growing, evolving, learning beings. Mistakes are not a detour from the path. They are the path. Failure is not the opposite of success. It's a part of it. Every person you admire, every voice you respect, every leader you follow has stumbled, doubted, and fallen short at some point. The difference is they didn't let imperfection stop them. They understood that excellence is attainable, but perfection is not. And excellence has grace in it. Perfection does not. The pursuit of perfection keeps you stuck. It paralyzes progress. It makes you second guess every decision, delay every dream, and shrink from every opportunity that doesn't come with a guarantee. It turns potential into pressure. It makes you believe that your worth is tied to performance, that your value is conditional, that love and acceptance have to be earned through flawlessness. That kind of mindset will keep you in cycles of anxiety, burnout, and self-doubt. It will convince you that you're never good enough, not because you're lacking, but because the standard you're trying to reach was never real to begin with. There is beauty in imperfection. That's where the soul lives. That's where connection happens. Nobody connects to your perfect mask. People connect to your humanity, your vulnerability, your story. When you let people see your imperfections, you give them permission to love you for who you truly are. And you give yourself permission to breathe, to show up without having all the answers, to try without needing to master it first, to start messy, to be seen in process, not just in the polished final product. Perfectionism often comes from pain. Somewhere along the way, maybe you learned that love had to be earned, that attention came through performance, that mistakes led to punishment or withdrawal. So you adapted. You became the one who got it right, who always smiled, who never asked for too much. But that survival strategy isn't serving you anymore. It's time to let it go. You don't have to earn your worth. You don't have to exhaust yourself to be accepted. You are already enough. When you release the need to be perfect, you make room for joy. You make room for creativity. You make room for growth. You start doing things because they matter to your heart, not because they'll be impressive to the world. You take risks again. You fall and get back up without shame. You allow yourself to be seen, truly seen, and loved anyway. There's something powerful that happens when you stop hiding behind perfection. You reclaim your power. You realize that your flaws don't disqualify you. They humanize you. They make you relatable. They make you real. The most impactful people are not the ones who appear flawless. They're the ones who show up with honesty, resilience, and the courage to be themselves in a world that's obsessed with filters and facades. Speak to yourself like someone you love. The way you talk to yourself becomes the soundtrack of your soul. Everyday thoughts are shaping your inner world, creating a dialogue that either lifts you up or tears you down. And the truth is, most people speak to themselves in ways they would never dare speak to someone they care about. If you were to take the voice in your head and put it on loudspeaker, would it sound like kindness? Or would it sound like criticism? Because the words you whisper to yourself in the quiet moments hold more power than the ones the world shouts at you. You spend more time with yourself than anyone else on the planet. Your voice is the one you hear the most. And if that voice is constantly telling you that you're not enough, that you're failing, that you're falling behind, then no amount of external praise will ever fill the hole that internal criticism creates. You can be surrounded by encouragement and still feel empty if your own voice is echoing shame. But when you start to treat yourself like someone you truly care about, everything changes. Your thoughts begin to heal, your choices begin to shift, your life begins to align. Think about it. When someone you love makes a mistake, you don't berate them, you don't call them names or tell them they're worthless. You remind them that they're human, that they're learning, that they're still worthy of love. You offer grace. You give space. You speak hope. That's what love does. It doesn't demand perfection. It offers presence. And you deserve that same presence from yourself. You deserve your own compassion, your own patience, your own understanding. Too many people have been trained to be their own worst critic, believing that harshness equals discipline. But shame doesn't build character. It builds fear. It creates a cycle of hiding and hustling, never feeling good enough, always trying to earn what you already deserve. But when you start speaking to yourself with kindness, you break that cycle. You create a space inside you where growth is nurtured, not punished. You begin to act not out of fear of failure, but from a foundation of love and belief. Words have weight. They plant seeds. If you keep saying, I'm stupid, I always mess up, I'll never get it right, those seeds grow into strongholds. But when you say, I'm learning, I made a mistake, but I'm not a mistake. I'm doing my best and that's enough. You plant something different. You plant courage. You plant grace. You plant resilience. That's how you start building a life rooted in truth, not torment. Speaking to yourself like someone you love means catching those critical thoughts and replacing them with gentleness. It means pausing when you hear that old tape playing, the one from childhood or trauma or culture, and choosing to rewrite the script. It's looking in the mirror and not just seeing flaws, but seeing someone who has survived, who has overcome, who is still showing up. It's recognizing your worth isn't based on how perfect you perform, but how fully you exist. Self-love isn't about ego or arrogance. It's about agreement. Agreement with the truth that you were created in love, for love, and through love. It's about no longer being at war with yourself, no longer tearing yourself down before the world even gets a chance. It's about becoming a safe place for your own soul. A place where failure is met with forgiveness, where wounds are met with care, where dreams are met with belief. Because the way you speak to yourself becomes the foundation of how you move through life. Your worth is not in your work. This is one of the most liberating truths you can ever embrace. In a world that measures value by productivity, titles, achievements, and accolades, it's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that your identity is tied to what you do. From an early age, you're asked what you want to be when you grow up. And that answer almost always revolves around a job, a career, a role. And somewhere along the way, the doing starts to define the being. You begin to equate success with self-worth, and suddenly slowing down feels like failing, resting feels like slacking, and not producing feels like not existing. But the truth is, your value was never meant to be based on performance. You are not a machine, you are not a resume, you are not a result, you are a soul. You were valuable the moment you took your first breath. Before you ever earned a paycheck, reached a milestone, or received praise for what you could produce, you were already enough. Your worth is not something you achieve, it's something you are. It is intrinsic, immovable, unchanging, and eternal. The danger of tying your identity to your work is that it makes you chase validation through burnout. It makes you believe that if you're not constantly proving yourself, you're falling behind. You start hustling for approval, measuring your day by how much you accomplished instead of how fully you lived. You feel guilty when you rest. You feel ashamed when you slow down. And the truth is, you can be wildly successful and still feel empty inside if you never separate your worth from your work. Work is a gift. It's a vehicle for purpose, service, creativity, and impact. But it is not the source of your identity. When you forget that, you start to live in fear. Fear of losing a job, fear of not doing enough, fear of being left behind. That fear becomes the fuel for every decision, every project, every moment of your day. But fear is a terrible foundation for anything. It robs you of joy. It blinds you to the present. It makes you miss the beauty of your own life because you're so caught up in trying to prove that you're enough. You're allowed to be proud of your work, to strive for excellence, to pursue your dreams, but not at the cost of your peace or your identity. You are allowed to rest without guilt. You are allowed to take a step back and breathe. You are allowed to exist in seasons where you're not climbing, building, or achieving and still be just as worthy of love and belonging. When you know that your worth is not tied to your output, you stop competing and start connecting. You stop striving and start living. You start making decisions based on alignment, not approval. You give yourself permission to try new things, to fail, to grow, and to redefine success on your own terms. You begin to see your life as more than a list of accomplishments. You see it as a story full of depth, full of meaning, full of moments that matter even when there's nothing to show for them on paper. Your work can be taken away. Your titles can change. Your achievements can fade. But your worth remains. It is not built by effort and it cannot be broken by failure. It is a truth that you must anchor yourself to in a world that will constantly try to make you forget. You are not what you do, you are who you are, and that is more than enough. Healing is not a straight line. It's not a checklist you complete, a finish line you cross, or a timeline you get to control. Healing is messy, nonlinear, unpredictable, and deeply personal. One day you feel strong, hopeful, full of clarity. The next day, something small cracks open an old wound, and you're right back in the thick of the pain. That doesn't mean you're broken. That doesn't mean you're going backward. That means you're human. Growth often looks like spiraling upward, not climbing in a straight shot. You visit the same places emotionally, but each time you do, you carry more awareness, more strength, more grace. We live in a world that glorifies instant results, quick fixes, rapid transformations. But real healing doesn't operate on demand. It moves in waves, in seasons, in layers. You can't force it, you can't rush it. You can only create the conditions that allow it. And that starts with giving yourself permission to feel. Not just the polished, presentable emotions, but the raw ones, the confusing ones, the ones you've been taught to avoid. Because the only way out is through numbing, avoiding, suppressing. Those things only delay the process. They put your pain on pause, but they never delete it. And eventually, that pain will find a way to speak, whether through your body, your mind, or your relationships. Healing often starts when you stop pretending you're okay, when you stop trying to be strong for everyone else, when you finally get honest about what hurts, when you allow yourself to grieve, not just the big losses, but the small ones too, the disappointments, the unmet expectations, the versions of yourself you had to let go. Healing happens in the quiet moments when no one is watching, when you're not performing. It happens when you choose to sit with your emotions instead of running from them. When you choose to tell the truth, even if your voice shakes. You don't have to have it all figured out. You don't need to be perfectly healed to be worthy of love or capable of moving forward. You can be in process and still be powerful. You can be healing and still be helping others. There is no shame in not being over it yet. There is no failure in needing more time. You are not behind. You are not too much. You are not weak because you're still hurting. The fact that you're still showing up, still breathing, still trying, that is strength. Healing requires compassion, not just from others, but from yourself. It means replacing judgment with curiosity. Instead of asking, what's wrong with me, try asking, what happened to me, and what do I need right now? That shift opens the door to understanding, to empathy, to self-respect. You are not your trauma. You are not your lowest moment. You are not defined by the things you had to survive. You are the person who is still here, still healing, still becoming. There will be days you feel like you've taken 10 steps forward and then 20 back. But progress isn't erased by pain. Sometimes the breakdown is part of the breakthrough. Sometimes what looks like falling apart is really the unraveling of who you're not, so you can step into who you really are. Give yourself grace for the days that feel heavy. Give yourself credit for every step, even the invisible ones. Healing isn't loud. It doesn't always come with fanfare. Sometimes it looks like choosing not to repeat the same pattern. Sometimes it's getting out of bed when you didn't think you could. Sometimes it's letting someone in. Sometimes it's forgiving yourself for the years you spent in survival mode. Comparison is a thief, not a teacher. It doesn't inspire excellence. It hijacks your peace. It doesn't challenge you to grow. It convinces you that you're already behind. The moment you start measuring your worth against someone else's highlight reel, you start shrinking your own story. You begin to devalue your progress, your journey, your voice. You begin to view yourself through a distorted lens, one shaped by someone else's success, someone else's path, someone else's timing. And in that space, it becomes nearly impossible to feel good enough. Because comparison always magnifies what you lack and minimizes what you've gained. In today's world, where every achievement is posted, polished, and projected for likes, it's easy to get caught in the trap of constant comparison. You scroll and see someone who looks happier, wealthier, more confident, more successful. And if you're not careful, you'll let that image rewrite the truth about your own life. You'll start to question your timeline. You'll start to doubt your purpose. You'll start to think there's something wrong with you because your journey doesn't look like theirs. But the truth is, you're not behind, you're just on a different road. And different doesn't mean less. Different doesn't mean wrong. Different means yours. Your path is tailor-made. Every twist, every delay, every lesson is shaping something in you that comparison can't even see. No one else knows the battles you fought to be here. No one sees the private moments of growth, the nights you didn't give up, the strength it took to keep believing. So stop measuring your journey against someone else's moment. You don't know what it costs them to get where they are, just like they don't know what it's costing you to keep going. You can admire someone without envying them. You can celebrate others without questioning yourself. Their success doesn't subtract from yours. There is enough room at the table for everyone. Comparison kills creativity. It robs you of the ability to build something authentic. It forces you into mimicry when you were born to innovate. When you compare, you stop listening to your own voice. You stop trusting your instincts. You start chasing standards that were never meant for you. And in doing so, you lose sight of your own unique brilliance. You were not designed to replicate anyone. You were designed to bring something new into the world, something only you can offer. But to do that, you have to stay rooted in your own lane. It's okay to be inspired by others. It's okay to learn from them. But let that inspiration be fuel, not a filter. Let it remind you of what's possible, not of what you lack. Celebrate the wins you see around you, but don't let them overshadow your own growth. Your story is unfolding exactly as it should. There is no right timeline. There is no universal script. There is only the next right step for you. And when that voice of comparison creeps in, ask yourself, Am I seeing the full picture? Or am I just seeing the surface? Am I looking through the eyes of love or the lens of lack? Because the lens you use will shape the story you tell yourself, and you have the power to change the lens. You can choose to see progress instead of perfection. You can choose to see growth instead of gaps. You can choose to honor your pace, your lessons, your evolution. You can choose to stay faithful to your own path even when it doesn't look like anyone else's. Your value isn't up for debate just because someone else is shining. You don't have to dim your light to appreciate theirs. And you don't have to inflate your worth to feel valid. You can just be exactly where you are, exactly who you are, and know that it's more than enough. Growth requires discomfort. It's easy to believe that growth should feel comfortable, seamless, and smooth, that when we're truly progressing, everything should fall into place effortlessly. But the reality is, growth often comes wrapped in challenge. It comes with uncertainty, awkwardness, and even pain. When you step outside of what you know, when you push your limits, when you stretch beyond your comfort zone, that's when real change begins. Growth is not about staying where you are and hoping for a better outcome. It's about embracing the tension of becoming more, even when it's uncomfortable. We've been taught to avoid discomfort. We've been taught to seek ease, to pursue comfort, to choose what's familiar. And while there's nothing wrong with moments of peace and relaxation, growth doesn't happen in those moments. Growth happens when you're faced with a decision to keep going when things get tough. Growth happens when you challenge your own beliefs, when you push yourself past your current capacity, when you confront the fears that hold you back. Growth requires you to get your hands dirty. It demands vulnerability. It demands honesty. It demands courage. Often, when we're on the path of growth, we try to fight the discomfort. We try to avoid the growing pains because they don't feel good. We want to bypass the hard parts, skip over the difficult seasons, and get straight to the outcome. But that's not how growth works. It's like lifting weights. When you're building strength, your muscles have to be torn down in order to grow back stronger. The same is true for your mind, your spirit, and your character. When you face obstacles, you don't just get through them, you get stronger because of them. Each challenge, each setback, each failure is building the foundation for your next level. Discomfort is not a sign of failure, it's a sign of transformation. It's a signal that you are expanding, stretching, and evolving. The discomfort you feel when you're faced with new challenges is not a barrier, it's an invitation. It's the universe telling you that you are on the verge of something greater. But you have to move through the discomfort to reach it. You can't stay where it's easy and expect things to change. You have to lean into the discomfort, acknowledge it, and trust that it's leading you somewhere better. Sometimes the discomfort feels like fear. It feels like uncertainty. It feels like you don't have what it takes. But that's just your mind trying to protect you. The truth is, you have everything you need inside of you. Growth is not about being perfect or having it all together. It's about showing up with what you have and trusting that the next step will unfold when you're ready. The discomfort you feel is your mind's way of telling you that you're on the verge of a breakthrough. It's the reminder that the greatest growth often comes from the hardest experiences. You are not meant to stay small. You are not meant to live within the confines of your comfort zone forever. Growth demands that you reach for more even when it feels impossible. It demands that you keep going when you're tired, when it doesn't make sense, when every part of you wants to quit. Because that's when growth really happens. When you keep going even though you don't feel like it. When you push through the discomfort. When you keep showing up even though you don't have all the answers. That's when your transformation occurs. The discomfort of growth doesn't last forever. It may feel overwhelming at times, but it's temporary. What stays with you is the strength, the wisdom, and the resilience you've gained. The discomfort will eventually fade, but what you've built along the way, the confidence, the courage, the capacity to handle bigger challenges, will stay with you forever. You'll look back one day and realize that the things that once felt uncomfortable were the very things that shaped you into the person you are now, and you'll be grateful for every single moment of it. You are the sum of the choices you make, and the most powerful choice you can make is to choose yourself. In a world that constantly pressures you to conform, to fit in, to be what others expect, choosing yourself often feels like an act of rebellion. But it is in this choice that you unlock the power to live authentically. When you choose yourself, you give yourself permission to stop hiding, to stop dimming your light for the comfort of others, and to start living your truth unapologetically. Choosing yourself is not about selfishness, it's about self-respect. It's about acknowledging that you are worthy of your own love, care, and attention. It's about recognizing that you are not here to live for others, to meet their expectations, or to constantly seek their approval. You are here to honor your own path, your own purpose, your own dreams. Too often people suppress their desires and passions in order to please others, to fit in, or to avoid conflict. But every time you silence your own voice in favor of someone else's, you lose a piece of yourself. And the more you lose, the harder it becomes to remember who you truly are. When you choose yourself, you begin to trust your intuition. You start to listen to that quiet inner voice that's been trying to guide you all along, the voice that knows what you need, what you want, and what is best for you. But too often, we drown that voice out with the noise of the world, the opinions of others, societal expectations, and the pressure to succeed according to someone else's definition of success. Choosing yourself means trusting that your instincts are valid. It means embracing the wisdom that resides within you rather than seeking validation outside of yourself. Choosing yourself also means setting boundaries. It means saying no when something doesn't align with your values, even if it's uncomfortable. It means protecting your time, energy, and mental well-being and not allowing others to take more than they give. Setting boundaries is not an act of rejection. It's an act of self-preservation. It's a way of honoring your needs and ensuring that you have the space to grow, to heal, and to pursue what matters most to you. When you choose yourself, you stop apologizing for taking care of your own needs. You stop feeling guilty for prioritizing your peace, your health, and your happiness. Choosing yourself is also about letting go of the fear of judgment. We all have a fear of what others will think, of being criticized or misunderstood, but the truth is, you cannot control how others perceive you, and the more you try, the less authentic you become. Choosing yourself means releasing the fear of judgment and embracing your own worth, regardless of how others see you. It's about letting go of the need for external approval and finding approval within. The more you choose yourself, the more you realize that the only opinion that truly matters is your own. It's important to understand that choosing yourself is not a one-time decision. It's a daily practice. Every day you are presented with countless opportunities to choose yourself. In every interaction, in every decision, in every moment, you have the choice to either honor yourself or sacrifice a part of who you are for the sake of others. The more you make this choice, the more you strengthen your relationship with yourself. You begin to see yourself as your own greatest ally, your own greatest supporter, and your own greatest love. Choosing yourself can be challenging at times. It can feel uncomfortable, especially if you're used to putting others first. It can feel selfish, especially if you've been taught to be selfless to the point of self-neglect. But the truth is, you can't pour from an empty cup. You can't give your best to the world if you're not taking care of yourself. And when you choose yourself, you actually become more equipped to give to others in a healthy, sustainable way. You fill your own cup so that it overflows. And when you give from that place of abundance, it's a gift that benefits everyone. Choosing yourself is not about perfection. It's about showing up for yourself, even on the days when you don't feel like it, when you don't have all the answers, and when you feel unworthy. It's about making a commitment to yourself every single day to prioritize your well-being, your growth, and your happiness, because at the end of the day, you are the one who has to live with yourself, and you deserve to live a life that is true to who you are. Choosing yourself is the first step in creating the life you've always wanted, a life that is authentic, fulfilling, and uniquely yours.